Elain Rinehart.
Discounting destruction due to disease, disasters, or DNA, I am certain my mental and physical development was adversely affected by exposure to a number of chemicals during my developmental years. My growth was stunted for sure. I didn't even get a half an inch taller after I was 12. I can wear the same outfit, my same ballet costume I wore in the 9th grade. I had to go through life with nicknames like the midget. In addition to that, part of my brain, the part that understands things like common sense, clearly never developed. If it hadn't been for those logic questions on the IQ test, I could have been Mensa material. You know the ones that I like. If Mr. Black has a blue house, and Mr. Brown has a beige house, and Mr. Green has a gray house, who is fucking Mr. White's wife? If I had been my mother, and my mother had been me, and my father was married to me instead of her, would our family have contained tenderness and love instead of anger and alcoholism? Maybe? Pi equals pi, or I don't know. My father was a lieutenant colonel in the Marine Corps. He was a lifer. He flew in 3 wars. Never once got shot down. He ain't gonna fall. He was really the archetypal leatherneck pilot. At 18, he was the pilot of a 6-man bomber, night bomber, that flew in the South Pacific during monsoon season. Daddy could fly with no radar, by the stars, in a hurricane with no gas, and never get lost. They called him Gone with the Wind Rinehart. He was really mythic. His tail gunner, I met his tail gunner at one of his World War II reunions, and he told me that there was a legend that Daddy could see the wind. He was mythic. He really was. He was never home. We never lived in the same place longer than a year, maybe 2 years at the most. Mother yearned for a more secure, more stable life. What's wrong with TWA? It seemed glamorous in the movies. Till my father explained to us in his succinct fashion, I don't want to fly a bus. I guess flying was no fun unless you were being chased. Oh, sure. Join the Marines. See the world. Well, we did live in Hawaii once. Of course, I was 2, and I had pneumonia, but they tell me it was nice. Now, when I was old enough to appreciate Hawaii, where did we go? Dugway, Utah. Yeah. Dugway, Utah, a bacteriological proving ground. Nerve gas, that kind of thing. Do you remember in 1968 that flock of sheep that dropped dead en masse one day in the Utah desert? The plane that accidentally sprayed that untested experimental nerve gas on those little lambs was from Dugway. Yeah, that was 60 miles from the nearest town, that being Tooele, population 500, in the middle of the desert. And why? Because they were testing top secret biological warfare. Yeah! No trees, no grass, no nosy civilians. Just tumbleweeds, sandstorms, and Quonset huts. And the military family's living quarters. And Dugway Elementary, where I went to school. And, whether accidentally or on purpose, they were spraying toxic chemicals into the desert, which was our, being kids, favorite place to play. It was like a huge diverse sandbox for the kids. I mean, there were treasures everywhere, like bleached out animal skeletons and horny toads, and a couple of herds of wild horses that we used to like to track. And we would run way out into the desert, wild as the horses we wanted to catch. No one's parents had any idea how far out into the desert we would go, because they were too busy going stir crazy. Once they had exhausted the mysteries of the commissary, the PX, and the officers' club, they hit the wall. And there were very few diversions left. The only remaining ones were adultery and alcoholism. And they both had their drawbacks, like murder and nervous breakdowns. But it did make for interesting conversation in the endless happy hours at the Officers Club. I loved the Officers Club. Even though I was only 10, I was already flirting with the young lieutenants. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. And it seemed like there was always a party. And it seemed like most of them were at our house. Daddy, this is Daddy. Daddy loved to party. Yes, he did. My parents' drink of choice was martinis, which was a euphemism for straight gin on ice. With the cocktail on it, if you were lucky. If my sister Julie and I had not eaten them all, because we ate them by the handfuls, probably the only vegetables we ever got. It was a real meat and potato diet back then. Many a morning after, Julie and I would tiptoe into our parents' bedroom, and we would pull up their eyelids to see, uncovering watery, unfocused eyes. And once we determined there was no hope of them getting up in time for breakfast, we would reconnoiter to the living room to forage for ourselves among the leftover cocktail peanuts and little chicken legs. And our brunch would not be complete without a glass of watered-down scotch that looked like iced tea. It surely felt as though it would put hair on our chests, which is what my father used to say about grapefruit juice, and we figured it must go double for scotch. Daddy always loved subtle sarcasm. When my sister Julie and I were 7 and we'd be throwing rocks at each other in the front yard, he would tell us to go play in the traffic. The traffic wasn't that bad. My favorite, though, was the one he used mostly on my mom, mostly after dinner, while they were playing gin rummy. It wouldn't be very long after they started playing that you would hear my mother calling my father a stupid idiot, which I always thought was redundant. And funny, because she was the one that was always losing. But what was Daddy's reply to her? Your kindness is exceeded only by your beauty. A heart attack killed him, according to the autopsy. But he fell down the stairs first. Or was pushed. It was way past cocktail hour. So Mother would have been well into her dark side. Their little house on the prairie would have morphed into the Lost Weekend meets Baby Jane. And since there was only Mother and Dad at home alone, the possibility of murder would have been considerable. Apparently there was an awful lot of blood and an awful lot of time between when he actually fell and when she actually called 911. Everything changed when my father fell down those stairs. One would think that the tides of change would be status quo for a child raised in the Marine Corps. Raised. I wasn't raised anywhere. I was dragged up. And that's the problem. I should be calmly rolling with the tides of change instead of dizzily heaving over the boat rail. But I discovered as an adult that I have adult attention deficit with a complication which I call adult decision deficit, rendering me unable to successfully triage my life. I gnaw like a dog with a bone over even trivial choices like what to eat for breakfast, when to get a divorce. What should I do? What should I do? What should I do? My favorite trick is to canvass the entire world and to see what they would all do first. And then, that not working, of course, I will just listen to the din from the voices in my head, screaming some obscure vision, I don't know. Most of them, thank God, are screaming, don't shoot. And so I'm still going, oh my God, what should I do? And then it's, what should I do first? What should I do? This, I'll do that, I'll do this. And then I start dancing the push-pull polka. Until, finally, I can't move. The problem is, the panic really stems from knowing that upon the heels of change follows choice. Choice. And its dreaded progeny, my bête noire, decision. And partly I know that this results from the lack of a solid foundation, and partly from easy access to my parents' fully stocked liquor cabinet since I was the age of 7. The coup de grace, though, the real coup de grace came around age 12. when I had repetitive and essentially total body immersions in DDT. You know, the pesticide that is now banned. Yeah. I'm quite sure it was those nighttime bicycle rides that really permanently poisoned me. You see, DDT was military protocol for containment of the mosquito population at Camp Lejeune, North Carolina. On hot summer nights, they'd have 2.5-ton convoy trucks barreling through the officers' quarters, shooting out huge clouds, white clouds of DDT from these great big vacuum hoses on the back of the truck, dispensing instant twilight zone for any kid riding a bike directly behind them. Suddenly the world was like the Good Ship Lollipop, that old Shirley Temple movie, and we would laugh and we would squeal and we'd ride blindly through the clouds until the clouds dispersed or until we crashed into a parked car. The infinitesimal residue of DDT on an apple cannot compare to sucking the full strength vapors directly down into your lungs night after night. We had no idea it was poison, although the smell might have told us something was wrong. And as usual, our parents had no idea where we were or what we were doing. Probably because there was a party going on somewhere. You know, if Daddy hadn't retired when I was so young, I would surely have married into the Marine Corps. I could be a drunken adulteress living in Utah right now. But drinking scotch for breakfast at 7 surely destroyed some blood cells, brain cells. Not to mention contact with biological warfare at 9 and inhaling DDT more than once, many times around age 11. Those were all my formative years. So I didn't think twice about experimenting with a little recreational drug use. I started experimenting with cocaine around 1995. And I stopped about 10 years later with a lot of help from my friends. It's amazing that I am still alive. It's amazing that I right? There's got to be some reason I'm still here. Either that or it's true that only the good die young. Either way, it looks like I'm in it for the long haul. The only thing I can hope for is that one of those many chemicals acts as a preservative.